She had tribal tattoos across her whole arms. The lonely rancher traced each one with tenderness. The coffee had gone cold before I noticed. That was the winter. I'd sit at the table with a cup and just stop. Not thinking, not sleeping. Just stopped the way a clock stops when you don't wind it. Nobody noticed because nobody was around to notice. I'd lost the North Pasture to the bank in October. Lost Delia 2 years before that, a fever that moved faster than the doctor could ride. The boys had left for Colorado with a mining outfit, and I didn't blame them. There was nothing here to inherit. 140 acres of frozen nothing and a man who'd gone gray early and talked mostly to the horses. That's who I was when Nara came. She wasn't from around here. You could see that before she said a word. The ink on her arms, black lines, curved and interlocked, running from her wrists to her shoulders on both sides, the patterns weren't anything I could name. Later, she told me they were her grandmother's designs. Later, she told me a lot of things. She came with a man named Caleb Grist who claimed she was his wife and had a paper to prove it. He had the paper. That much was true. What was also true was the split lip and the way she stood, weight forward, watching the door even when she sat down. I'd seen that in horses that had been badly kept. That particular stillness that isn't peace. That's how I knew. Grist left her at my place like a parcel, said he'd be back in 3 days, had business in Cimarron. He was gone before I could say he wasn't welcome to come back. She didn't ask for anything the first night, sat by the stove and dried out and didn't speak. I made biscuits because it was the only thing I could make that came out right. She ate too and said thank you, and that was all. The second morning she was up before me, fire going, water on. I came in from the barn and she had my coat on, the old one I'd left on the peg because she'd been cold in the night and hadn't wanted to ask. She looked at me like I might be angry about the coat. I told her she could have it. I had another. She stayed 2 weeks before Grist came back. By then she'd repaired the hinge on the barn door, restacked the woodpile the right way so it would shed rain, and pointed out 3 places in the roof that would leak come spring. She worked without being asked and without looking for praise. I got used to her being in the yard. When Grist came back, I was splitting wood, and he walked up to me and said she was his and he'd have her. I kept splitting wood. I said she doesn't want to go. He had 2 men with him, young men, the kind that ride for anybody. He told me I was an old fool who'd gotten confused. What happened next I won't dress up. One of them hit me from behind with something, the butt of a rifle, I think, and I went down hard against the chopping block. I remember the cold of the ground and blood in my mouth, and the sound of Grist's boots walking away. I don't know how long I was there. When I came around, she was kneeling next to me in the snow. She'd gotten a cloth from somewhere. She was pressing it against the back of my head and talking low, not to me, I don't think, or not in English, just a steady sound like she was talking something back. Her arms were around me, those tattooed arms, and I could feel the cold of the ink through my shirt, or I thought I could. Probably I was not thinking straight. I said, "Where's Grist?" She said, "Gone." I said, "The 2 men." She said, "Also gone." I asked her what had happened. She didn't say right away. She helped me sit up, packed snow against the back of my head, which hurt like the devil but stopped the swelling. Then she said, matter of fact as weather, she told Grist that if he took her, she'd bring his name to the marshals in Raton and testify to what he'd done to a woman in Santa Fe last spring. She knew something that would hang him if it came to light. He'd known she knew it. He'd been hoping she wouldn't say it out loud. She'd said it out loud. He left. The 2 young men looked at each other and left after him. I said, "You could have done that 2 weeks ago." She looked at me. She said, "2 weeks ago I didn't know if you were worth it." I didn't know what to say to that. A woman deciding I was worth going up against 3 men for. The idea sat on my chest like a stone, but a warm one. She stayed, not because she had nowhere to go, she had people in the territory. She told me later she could have ridden east and been with her family inside a week. She stayed because she wanted to. That was the thing I kept turning over those first months. Not that she was there, that she had chosen to be. Spring came and the roof leaked in exactly the 3 places she'd pointed out. We fixed them together. She was better on a ladder than I was steadier. There was one evening, I remember this exactly. We were on the porch after supper, and the light was going long and gold across the grass, and she had her sleeves rolled up. The patterns on her arms caught the last of the sun in a particular way. I asked if I could look. "Just look." She held her arm out. I traced one of the lines with my finger, the long curve that ran from her wrist to the inside of her elbow. She told me what that one meant in her grandmother's language. I can't say it the way she said it. Something like "she who holds." I kept my hand on her arm and didn't say anything. She didn't pull away. The ranch came back slow. Not all of it, the north pasture is still the banks, always will be, but enough. Enough that when the boys wrote from Colorado, I wrote back and said if they came home, there'd be something to come home to. One of them did. He shook Nara's hand the first morning, and by the second week was asking her questions about the horses like she'd always been here. She had, that's the only way I can account for it. She'd been here all along, just not yet arrived. I'm telling you this because men like me, the ones who'd given up on being found, on being worth the trouble, sometimes we're wrong about ourselves. We're just wrong, and it takes somebody else to know that before we do. She still rolls up her sleeves when she works. I still look. She lets me. I don't trace them anymore without asking. She always says yes.